It's the final lap, the home stretch to the UN's Council of the Parties, or COP, coming up in my home, Glasgow, Scotland. We're in Milan, Italy, where the last big meeting is being held, the pre-COP. The United Nations has seen the importance the youth of this world can make and have been dedicating activities before the big conferences. Here in Milan, it's the Youth for Climate Conference. And it's hard to talk about youth and climate without mentioning Greta Thunberg, who had some harsh things to say about the governments of the world, and some harsh things to say about her hosts at the UN.
Build back better, blah, blah, blah. Green economy, blah, blah, blah.
On this episode of Road to Glasgow. Hi, I'm Shonagh Smith, and the United Nations has come to Milan, Italy for a series of meetings and conferences leading up to the big COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland. What is the COP? It's the Conference of the Parties of the United Nations on climate issues and is held annually. This all began at the Rio Earth Summit in 1992 when the global climate alarm was sounded. Since then, there have been a few key initiatives to come out of the COPs, like the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreements. But for the most part, the COPs have been a lot of talk and not a lot of action. This year is COP26, the 26th annual meeting. Over 26 years of meetings, discussions, summits, and suggestions. Meanwhile, the climate continues to worsen. Frustration levels are high, especially in the youth. Which brings us to Milan. While the main COP is being held in the UK, Italy is the co-host of the COP and is why we're here. Officially called the pre-COP, the purpose is to provide countries with an informal setting to discuss and exchange views on key political aspects heading into Glasgow. Since we're in Italy, I wanted to know more about how the country is doing on climate action, so I caught up with our friend Maria Sole Bianco to talk about Milan and Italy.
I think like many other countries in the world, Italy needs still to do many things to fully even design and develop a strategy that effectively address climate change. Milan is a city where a lot of things have happened in that direction. You know, it's one of the first cities in Italy for sustainable mobility. So we have a lot of car sharing, bike sharing, a lot of roads where bike can, go, and parks. So it's getting into that direction, but it's still one of the highest city in terms of traffic that you have.
Yes, I've noticed that.
You noticed?
But this is really beautiful. I think there's a lot of effort to integrate greenery with the city.
Yes, this is an important part, and here we have a great example because we have these new buildings, but also behind that we have a nice park. And this also showcases how a city can be smart and also biodiversity friendly. The action and the activity that we carry on here in the city, even if we are hundreds of kilometers away from the sea, have an impact on the ocean and on the health of the planet in general. So we call this project The Sea Starts From Here, you know, because it's all connected and we can be steward of the city and of the ocean at the same time.
At the COP and the pre-COP, the UN is trying to include the youth of the world. They define youth as people under the age of 35, and in Milan, 2 days before the pre-COP, the UN is holding the Youth for Climate event. Almost 400 people between 15 to 29 years of age have been selected and invited to attend so that the UN can hear their voices. These young people were selected based on activism and geographical and gender balance. They're calling this driving ambition, and it's a nice slogan. The UN is encouraging the young people to contribute to the increase in climate ambition coming out of the 2015 Paris Agreement. but honestly, I'm a bit confused trying to figure all this out. I ran into several United Nations youth programs that seemed to have the same purpose. I felt I needed a roadmap to navigate all the acronyms. Let's see if I've got this straight. First up is YOUNGO, and I sat down with Heeta Lakhani, representing the Global South.
So YOUNGO is the official mechanism, so we're the official youth constituency within the UNFCCC. There are 9 constituencies for civil society engagement in general. The UN process is a country-driven, or in the UNFCCC case, a party-driven process. A country is called a party. And for civil society to engage, we're observers to the party-driven process. And there are 9 observer constituencies. YOUNGO is one of the 9. We're basically a volunteer-based network of young people from across the world. We have close to 10,000 members from 150 plus countries, close to 1,000 plus organizations that are part of our membership of volunteers that form our network called YOUNGO. The way we work is through working groups. So we have multiple working groups, close to about 20 now, that focus on different aspects as long as it's related to climate and youth. Some of our working groups are very thematic, like very UNFCCC negotiation based, like for example, adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage, technology, finance. But we also have a lot of cross-cutting working groups like gender, human rights, health, indigenous peoples, renewable energy, cities, so on and so forth. So we're really, like I mentioned, a space open for youth to engage as long as the topic is relevant to young people and to climate.
And there's the group of 7 who are on the Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group. I talked to Sophia Kianni about this.
So it's a different group than YOUNGO. We were specifically created in order to advise the Secretary General regularly on his climate action policy. So the 7 of us from around the world, we meet with him regularly and we give him feedback on his climate strategy. And in addition to that, we hold consultations with young people from around the world, both regionally and nationally, in order to basically get their temperament on what they think we should do as far as climate action and what specifically the Secretary General should be doing.
Why did the Secretary General create this advisory group?
I think he just wanted another way to be able to concretely engage with young people and to have young people meaningfully contribute to his climate strategy, and to be able to firsthand provide him our experiences, and to give him basically like an update on what we're doing and what we think that people in our specific countries are doing as far as climate action goes. Because I think that it's great because we're all from 7 different regions from around the world, and so we're able to kind of give our expertise on like, okay, for me, like what are US climate activists saying, what are we planning, and so we're able to give him regular updates, which I think is very valuable and very helpful.
And the UN has other programs and groups and committees like Project 17, the youth ambassadors selected to attend this meeting and others. Is it a genuine effort from the UN to hear the youth, or is it simply lip service? Some, like Greta Thunberg, believe it's an empty effort, while others believe it's a genuine effort to include the voices of young people in the climate policies determined in the COP. I want to find the answer.
Build back better, blah, blah, blah. Green economy, blah, blah, blah. Net zero by 2050, blah, blah, blah. Net zero by 2050, blah, blah, blah. Net zero, blah, blah, blah. Climate neutral, blah, blah, blah. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders. Words that sound great, but so far has led to no action. Our leaders' intentional lack of action is a betrayal towards all present and future generations. If this is what they consider to be climate action, then we don't want it. They invite cherry-picked young people to meetings like this to pretend that they are listening to us. But they are not. Hope is not passive. Hope is not blah, blah, blah. Hope is telling the truth. Hope is taking action. And hope always comes from the people.
At the end of the day, we are not negotiators. We can't make these decisions for ourselves. So we have to wait for someone to take this into the COP for us. Even though we're there as civil society, we have a seat at the plenary, we can speak, but we can't make the decisions. We can't draft the text that's being done. And this is, I think, the biggest mismatch. And I think this is the sort of frustration that everyone has been feeling, to see that, you know, people are shouting, they're taking to the streets now. A few years ago when I started back in 2015-16, the awareness for even within youth was much lower. This has really skyrocketed, which is amazing to see so many young people, which is why we're an event like we are today, because everyone is talking about youth inclusion. But we really need to see how meaningfully young people are being included. Are their voices being really heard, or is it just another declaration that's floating somewhere on the internet for people to look at? And this is somehow not matching a lot of the times.
Here in Milan, I want to know if we're being tokenized, like Greta talked about, or if there's a real point and purpose to these meetings, like Heeta and Sophia are working towards. I'm going to find out. While here at the Youth for Climate concert soundcheck, I ran into my new friend AY Young, who is performing at the conference. AY told me about how he struggled after being on the X Factor, but found the energy to continue making music. Upon learning that over 1 billion people don't have a reliable source of power, he used his music to bring sustainable energy to those without it. He is a rising voice in the global climate effort.
I'm very action-oriented. I've been a young leader for a year now. And I understand that sentiment of, man, are we really just in here to say something, or are they really listening? Yeah. You know, I think it's because we have this, we're so siloed. And even the youth is becoming siloed, I think, in this movement.
Here is someone, part of a UN youth movement, Project 17, who is doing something. Project 17 is all about the 17 climate goals recognised by the UN, and they've selected 17 young people from around the world to be ambassadors for it. AY is the only American in the group. AY has seen a need in the world, the lack of access to energy, which is goal number 7, and he started doing something about it, providing renewable batteries, which is why he calls his concerts the Battery Tour.
No, it's not just about the concert, it's about an action. It's about after the concert, someone getting access to energy around the world, because there's 1 billion people that don't have energy. So let's get, you know, the world plugged into renewable energy, right? So it's more along the lines of what I'm seeing from the youth, from like your Greta Thunbergs and your youth leaders of like, yeah, we can talk about something, right? But action. Right. And so I like to do the concert and then look around, oh, okay, that kid in Honduras just got plugged in. Good, so let's amplify impact.
With the undercurrent of frustration running through the youth, I asked AY if he's felt it and where he thinks it might be coming from.
Honestly, when I heard about COP, I was like, oh my God, like what's about to happen? Like I'm here at COP right now. I'm looking around, I'm like, okay, so I'm guessing that like by tomorrow, like millions of people are just gonna have like energy or like water, or like what catastrophic thing is happening that like so many companies putting things on hold, flying out, people spending millions of dollars, get my logo in front of that place, like all this talking. And I'm like, I'm still trying to figure out, is the world about to be saved tomorrow? Like there's droughts and like it's warming up and like all this stuff's happening, right? Like we're losing species. And I'm trying to figure out like, what is so cool about COP though? I really want to know, because it's so many, like please tell me how all these people talking, you know, fixes all these issues. Like I share the frustration and like, okay, you can talk all day, you know, where's the action?
Back at Youth for Climate, US Presidential Envoy John Kerry answered some questions in a special session with the youth. He too was tired of all the talk and countries not doing their part.
The IEA tells us we have to deploy renewables 6 times faster than we are today. We have to build forests 5 times faster than we are today. We have to stop coal 5 times faster than we are today. We have to deploy electric vehicles 22 times faster than we are today. So we're behind. And we have to stop the BS that is being thrown at us by a number of countries that have not been willing to sign up to what Great Britain has signed up to, we've signed up to, Japan, Canada, the EU. That is to keep 1.5 degrees alive. You have to insist. You have to light up the internet. You have to light up social media. You have to do everything you can in this lead up to the COP to make certain that we are pushing other countries to do more than they have been willing to accept today, so that we can, over the next 10 years, keep the 1.5 degrees alive.
Well, clearly it's not just the youth who are frustrated. Even seasoned politicians like John Kerry are feeling it. I'm really having trouble wrestling through this talk versus action. There's got to be answers. Let's find out when we return to Road to Glasgow. It's easy to march and protest and demand action, but what do we want to see happen? What are we protesting for? If we're calling for climate justice, what does that look like? If we're saying, let's get to net zero carbon emissions, how do we make that happen? I think for action to occur, we've got to be a wee bit more specific and a lot less general. And disappointingly, as I've talked to youth leaders, it's been difficult to get specifics. But Youth Ambassador from Italy, Daniela Guadagnolo, Sophia Kianni from the Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group, and YOUNGO Global South leader Heeta Lakhani had some good ideas.
For me, one of the issues that I really care about, because I have a background also in IT and also economics, is about the technology and also the storage of green energy. Because at the moment there is not a technology which is advanced enough to allow us to really exploit the potential of green energy. Because at the moment we are still fixed with our economical models, which are based on CO2, oil, carbon and similar. But I think that for the future we have also to shift this economical model to a more sustainable one. And for me, the role of energy is crucial.
Creating specific measures in order to prevent like greenwashing, so having like specific claims and specific like guidelines in order for something to be like a public advertisement. So like that's like one specific thing that we discussed. Like other specific things we discussed were like implementing climate change curriculum into schools and then having like a framework for what exactly would be taught, including like climate justice, talking about like intersectionality, talking about environmental racism in schools. So not just specifically having like a climate change curriculum broadly speaking, but also integrating climate change education within different frameworks like history and other subjects that are already taught in schools.
One, we've been championing for young people to have a seat at the negotiations, right? So to every country to have youth negotiators as part of their delegation. You build that capacity, train them. YOUNGO can do a lot of capacity building. We have young people who've been part of processes for years. So build the capacity of young people to be able to do the technical negotiations. Ensure that they're part of your country delegation. Give them a seat. And there are some countries that have amazing youth negotiator programs or youth delegate programs, but it's only a handful of countries and a majority of them are European based. So there's a lot of disparity. Global South voices are completely omitted from the technical or from the physical participation in that sense as a youth negotiator. So that would be a huge win. We've been, for years we've been saying this, young people need to be at the table, and you can give them a seat at the table by making them a part of your delegation, not by having an event outside of the COP for them. Because that's not a seat at the table, we're just, creating a new event which has no connection to the original one.
A seat at the table. When Heeta said that, I wasn't sure exactly what she meant. Aren't these meetings and young leader groups called by the UN for just that purpose? She cleared it up.
The UN, the way it's structured, really cannot make decisions, and that's the problem. People expect the UN to do things, but the UN cannot make decisions, especially the UNFCCC or the UN Climate Change Secretariat. It's a secretariat. It convenes meetings, it brings people together, it channels a process, but it does not take decisions, and this is where we're stuck. Decisions are taken by countries. That's why I said it's a country-driven or it's a party-driven process. And we need countries. For example, Italy, they're hosting this event now. It's an entirely country-driven process, which is amazing. It's a great into the process, right? You can just say, as Italy, they could just take this entire declaration and say, this is going to be Italy's position at COP. But they're not going to do that. And this is just one declaration. This is one event. It's not... We're seeing this for years. What we do need is real countries to listen to young people and not just say, okay, this is very inspiring, we want to listen to you, but what do you do after listening to us? And I think a lot of the times, that doesn't match. They just want to listen and applaud, but at the end of it, they don't really want to champion. Like I said, we need to be a part of the delegations. Only then can our voices, we can speak for ourselves as long as we have the seat to.
It's starting to make sense to me. Heeta says that the UN can facilitate, can bring people together to find creative ways to solve problems. I talked to my friend Maria Soleil about this. Do you feel like the IUCN and the UN, organizations like that they're built for action?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. I think that they are built for policy and to inspire action, to provide an agenda. But the action at the end, they happen at other levels, grassroots levels, you know. But still, those moments of communities from all over the world getting together to discuss about solution, to interact with each other, to share frustration, but also to inspire each other with solution are fundamental. But at the end, the action needs to happen at the grassroots level.
Right. So a lot of that frustration is just misplaced expectation about what these organizations are for, right? They're for discussing, but it needs to translate to...
Yes, and they should have high ambition. I mean, you're right, 100%. They are a place for discussion. They are a place where strategy can be developed. They are a place where target can be set. So we need to be really part of the discussion in terms of deciding the ambition of those targets, of those goals, of those objectives. But at the end, the action doesn't happen at the UN level. They happen grassroots here. And so it's up to all the participants then to bring back the message to their nation and implement it in order to meet the objectives and the targets.
I'm starting to discover something that is really helping me on this road. Certainly, I've been frustrated by the lack of action at these meetings and workshops and conferences. But here's what I've been experiencing here in Milan. The United Nations is not an organization that can provide action. They are a coming together to help plan the action. It's up to each country, each government, and really each person to act. The UN cannot make them. By changing my expectations at these UN events, I'm less frustrated by them. Of course, it leaves a frustration at the various governments of the world who keep doing nothing, or even worse, say they're doing something when they're actually not. I've learned a lot on this road, and I'm looking forward to going home. It's Scotland and COP26 on the next episode of Road to Glasgow.